I think other people's silence is what makes it dangerous for those of us who do speak up. If more of us spoke up, if that became the norm, if chanting down a genocide was the norm in this country, it wouldn't be dangerous for anyone.
Welcome back to In the Meanwhile, where the vibes are bad, the news is worse, and yet somehow we're still here. I'm Nora Kenworthy.
And I'm Marcus Harrison Green. You know, Nora, do you ever wake up and feel like you're living in a mashup of Black Mirror, Children of Man, and Method Man's To Cow 2000 album, but without the production budget or the healing?
I do, although it's been a while since I listened to Method Man. It's the summer of Jeff Bezos getting married on a yacht the size of Bainbridge Island, while the rest of us are out here treating happiness like it's Sudafed, locked up, rationed, suspiciously hard to get without an ID.
Damn, that's a little too real, I gotta say. But Nora, if we're going down, we are going down with a beat, which is why we're very hyped about today's guest, the one, the only Gabriel Teodros.
If you've spent even 5 minutes in Seattle or on our radio waves or in the South End, you know Gabriel. MC, poet, educator, radio host, sci-fi nerd, community grit, organizer, and yeah, probably a time traveler sent back to warn us about the perils of late-stage capitalism through spoken word.
He's got me believing it, let me tell you. His album, From the Ashes of Our Homes, isn't just music. It's a field manual for grief, resistance, and rebuilding. I would say that it's bell hooks meets Baldwin over boom bap.
Or like if Bell Hooks and Tupac had a baby and the baby rapped about Palestine and patriarchy and pushing through grief without losing joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
In this convo, we get into all of that, why silence is complicity, how art can be an act of survival, and what it means to build community that doesn't just mourn together, but dances together too.
And look, I will give our listeners a content warning because I'm going to confront him about ghosting my mixtape back in the day. It was Soldier Boy meets Barry Manilow, and I think it could have saved hip hop personally.
I feel like we're going to need a whole episode dedicated to that one.
I appreciate that, Nora.
But
I
I
do.
will let you argue that point with him.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Anyway, today's conversation goes deep. We're talking love work, resistance through rhythm, and what it means to build joy even when everything around you is falling apart.
Let's get into it. And it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Gabriel Teodros. Gabriel Teodros is a musician and writer from South Seattle who first made a mark with the group Abyssinian Creole and reached an international audience with his critically acclaimed solo debut, Lovework. He has been setting stages on fire ever since, all across the US, Canada, Mexico, Cuba, Ethiopia, and South Africa, often in combination with workshops on creative writing, music history, science fiction, and media literacy. Gabriel, it is such a pleasure to have you on our podcast today.
Thank you, Marcus. It's good to be here. It's good to see you.
It's great to see you. And before we kick everything off, man, I gotta just get this out the way. About 8 years ago, I sent you my mixtape, man. It was a cross. It was a cross between MC Hammer, Soldier Boy, and Barry Manilow.
Oh man.
And I've never heard anything back, bro. Did it get lost in the mail? Was it lost in translation? What happened?
Can you send it to me again? I want to hear it. That
Okay.
makes sounds amazing.
I got you after that. I got you after the episode. That being said, getting into what we're discussing today, Gary, man, you have long held that art is resistance. Could you just talk a little bit about what that's meant for you, particularly in this last year when it feels like grief is just bottomless and joy itself, just keeping on the joy, is a political act?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, just growing up on hip hop music. So my family from Ethiopia, grew up in the South End, but I also was born and raised in a time when there wasn't much of an Ethiopian community in South Seattle. They called me one of the first kids, as in one of the first kids born in Ethiopia. My mom came here in the 70s. There was 30 to 40 Ethiopian and Eritrean people in that time. And I say that to say that hip hop helped me understand the world that I was living in and the one that I was growing up in. It gave me language to describe the oppression that we all were like coming up against, and what I would have to face going up through the school system. And in the 80s, seeing the crack era, seeing the school to prison pipeline, experiencing it for the first time, in a time when my parents, well, when my mother and my extended family didn't even really understand it because it's not the context that they grew up in. They moved here, you know? Um, so hip hop not only explained what I was going through, but it also gave me the tools to resist, you know? And it also let me know that I wasn't alone and that I wasn't crazy for thinking the things that I was thinking, for experiencing the things that I was experiencing, you know? Um, and the two have always been tied together for me ever since, music and resistance, you know? Um, Not just resistance, but to boldly claim that our life matters, you know, in a in a country, in a society that constantly tries to reinforce this idea that you don't matter, you know what I mean? And I think once I finally picked up my pen and pad and started writing my own story, um, yeah, that was resistance too. You know,
Yeah.
I was so young when I started. I was 16 years old. Um, I've told this story a lot, but Tupac was one of my biggest inspirations when I started writing. When he died, I had this dream. I'll try to tell a truncated version. I had a dream that Tupac was on this underground platform, and this underground platform was like a subway or like a light rail station, but we didn't have a light rail station yet on Beacon Hill, you know? And the station had these windows that bled a pure light, and Pac was on his platform waiting to get on this train to go to the other side. Um,
Wow.
when you go to the other side, there's no coming back. But I knew how he could get off the platform and come back up the stairs back to life. And in my dream, I shook his hand, you know, and I told him like, you're the one that's supposed to lead us. You're the one that's supposed to like lead us to our liberation. You've got the ears of everybody. And he laughed and he shook his head and he said, it's on you now. And I woke up and he died. And this person that my mom was dating comes into my bedroom, says, Pac just died. I just hear this his voice in my head ringing, it's on you now, it's on you now. And for me, it was set. Like this is what my life is gonna be. Not just music, but
Mm.
everything that I thought Pac was supposed to do. It's on our generation now to take that forward into the future, you know? Um, and if you look at who Pac was, in his music, a very complicated person,
Very, yes.
who contradicted himself from song to song, but he also was lifting up names of Black freedom fighters. He was lifting up the name of Mutulu Shakur, who was his
Mm.
stepfather, of Asada, of Geronimo G. Jaga, of all these incredible Black political prisoners from the Panthers era, because he himself was a Panther Cub. You know, shout out
Right.
to Afeni Shakur, rest in peace. So it's like that's the hip hop that I grew up on. You know, that's that's the music that inspired me to even make music. So
Mm.
for me, it's just there's no separating music and resistance.
Damn, we
Damn,
might
I
could
mean,
just let's end the interview right now because that's how we good. We got everything.
talk about passing the baton, man. That is not a dream you can ignore.
No.
Ah,
Um, I've been really inspired by a lot of your music, but in particular, the ways that you yourself describe and name your music as a form of love work.
Mhm.
That's the name of one of your albums. What does the concept of love work mean to you today?
mhm.
And I guess, how is art a form of love work for you?
Yeah. So the concept of love work comes directly from Bell Hooks. May she rest in peace. Um, I'm still not over her passing away, by the way. Um, so I read all about love. I think like A lot of men do right after a breakup.
That's you ain't lying on that one.
and um and it became like, I feel like Bell Hooks' writing became like water in a desert, when I was like
Mhm.
dying of thirst. And Bell Hooks throughout that series, because there's 3 books, um, all about love, salvation, and communion. Um, she makes the point that most everything that we've been taught about love isn't love, and to really know love, we have to undo every system of domination that stops people from really being loving. So to know love, especially as men in the society, people who've been socialized as men, we have to undo systems that we've internalized of patriarchy, of male domination, uh, homophobia, like all the systems of domination that stop people from really being their true full selves. So when I was working on the Lovework album, um, I was thinking about Bell Hooks a lot. I was thinking about Khalil Gibran in The Prophet. He said, "Love is work made visible." And I never give this brother enough credit, but I also was thinking of a Korean MC from Chicago by the name of Denizen Kane. Um, he was from a crew called I Was Born with Two Tongues, which I obviously felt, and another crew called Typical Cats. And he had this bar where he said, the end comes quick and ego says quit. I say work is love. Let my body be a brick, you know? And that line just hit me so tough. And
Mhm.
and I was reading Bell Hooks at the same time, thinking about Khalil Gibran. So I was like, yeah, love work. Not love as work, but to know love, we have to work, and there's no separating these two concepts,
Hmm.
so that's why love work was put together as one word. um Everything that inspired that album, I feel like, has kind of been a through line through the rest of my life, um particularly like undoing every idea that we have of black masculinity that stops people from really being loving, that stops us from being our true selves. um yeah, it's just in everything I do. For me, love work is about claiming your humanity again and again and choosing to fight for it, because the minute you become complacent, it's like you can go back to that state of unloving. I think of it sometimes, especially like being taught patriarchy, at a young age. The first people we harm in patriarchy as men are ourselves, you know. I can't remember who said it. I am quoting someone though. There is there's a form of self-mutilation that occurs, right? Um Men cut off their own sense of sensuality to be okay with domination. And I often think of it like somebody who's overcoming an addiction, like people who are in AA and NA programs. Like, you've got to make that step every single day. Like, you've got to choose to go to that meeting. You've got to choose to not use today, and you're always one step away from being an addict again. I really think that patriarchy is the same way. We have to choose to fight to undo these systems of domination every single day, um, for the sake of our own humanity and so we don't hurt other people. So that's what I think about when I think of love work. And that's a long answer, but I think the second part of your question was, how does it relate today? I mean, that's just in everything. Like, if you look at this country, if you look at the manosphere that has
Mm.
created politicians and influential people, like, it's all right there. You know what I mean? Like, even in hip hop, like, I've been thinking about this a lot. In hip hop, I see a lot of people who would be peers turn right wing and turn fascist. And I've seen more
Wow.
of them in the last few years than at any other time. And for me, the warning signs have been, especially with artists who have been critical of like racism, or,
Mm.
critical of white supremacy, but they don't go far enough to critique capitalism or to critique patriarchy. And those have become red flags for me. When I see people don't critique those two things within themselves, it's like they can slide into right wing fascism so quick because that side is ready to
Yeah.
embrace you. So
Yeah, Lord Jamar's broken my heart in the
Oh
recent
my
years, man.
God. Oh my
but
God.
but
And he's a
anyhow,
yeah.
Lord, anyhow, that's another conversation for another day. That being said, our listeners have to recognize right now what I've recognized back when I was first starting it out in journalism, and I remember I used to interview you, and we would joke. Well, maybe it wasn't more of a joke on my end than yours, but I used to joke that I could sit with you for an hour and a half, and I could have quotes from you about that I could spurse out on various stories for the next 6 months. Like I could, whether it was reparations or Metro Transit or earthquake preparedness. Let me just look up and okay, I got something from Gabe. But I want to ask you.
That's called me having ADHD.
Well, hey, well, it was beneficial to
I want
my
your kind of
profession.
ADHD.
Yes. But that being said, I mean, as an artist, you were a true artist, like just in terms of you being multifaceted and not just siloed into and not just being siloed into one genre. Whether it's speculative fiction, again, whether it's music, right, whether it's organizing, whether it's teaching. And so for you, how do you know what is the right genre, if you will, to activate, when it comes to trying to get your message across or trying to, be most effective, when it comes to things like resistance or organizing?
Yeah, thank you for that. It was seriously like thank you for that question because sometimes I feel like it's hard for people to understand the different like mediums that I work in, and it's hard for sometimes I think it's hard for people to imagine any artist working in a medium that's different than the first one they met them in. So for example, like I have people that used to listen to my radio show on KXP that never knew I did music at all. Like that was a shock to them that I created music at all, which is like the main thing that I've done my whole life. It's just interesting. Um, for me, I try not to overthink it. I'm definitely following intuition. Um, Haile Garima, one of my biggest inspirations, he said, "Tell the story that you hunger to hear in the language that feels the most natural to you." He was
Mm,
talking about filmmaking, but I think that's just a universal truth for storytelling across any medium. And that's my guiding light. Do I hunger to hear this story? Am I the person to tell it? Am I able to tell it in this form? And that's it. There also is a little part of me that's curious, that likes to do things that are hard for some reason. I like a challenge. And yeah, sometimes that's what inspires me too. Like, oh, I don't know how to make a beat, but I learned how. And once I learned how, oh, I wanted to produce an album, and okay, I'm gonna do that. Like it's there is an excitement in learning a new medium too that can go really far.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot as you're talking about what brings us joy in these really tough times. And I think part of that is the joy of the renewal of learning a new thing, right? Or of,
Mhm.
of acquiring a new craft and struggling with it. And I am always inspired by people like you who continue to do that struggle. um,
It's fun.
and frustrating sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah.
um, One of the reasons we wanted to chat with you is because of your organizing work around Palestine.
Hmm.
You've been such an outspoken voice on this, and you've also said that it's been painful to watch other artists stay silent on issues of Palestine, either out of fear or um, I don't know. I don't know why people are silent.
Yeah.
But we're facing a lot of blowback. And so what have you learned about what it takes for you to speak up and keep speaking up on issues like this one when, it's important to say that the risk is real, and the retribution is often real for artists?
Yeah. Um, I mean, the first thing I want to say is that the risk and the retribution would not be as bad as if more people spoke up.
100%. Yeah.
Like, I think other people's silence is what makes it dangerous for those of us who do speak up. If more of us spoke up, if that became the norm, if chanting down a genocide was the norm in this country, it wouldn't be dangerous for anyone. And it's such common sense, you know? Um, so there's that. Um, I don't know how not to speak about it. I really don't, you know? I worry about people's humanity who, and I wonder, do they see the same images that I see when I log into Instagram? When I go on social media, like, are they seeing images of a genocide happening in real time? Because I do
Mm-hmm.
when I log into social media now, and that's not normal. Nobody should ever be okay with that. Nobody should ever be numb to that, you know? Um, and it's just that simple. Like I talked earlier about love work, about holding on to your humanity. To me, speaking out against injustice is part of holding on to your humanity.
Mm-hmm.
As simple as that, you know? Like the more you become numb to it and scared to speak out, like I worry about your mental health. I worry about your emotional health. Like I don't know how people can just consume death
Yeah.
Mm.
and be quiet. Like that actually boggles my mind, you know?
Yeah, I am just curious because we live in this time where it, there is just so much, I'll say, like rampant dehumanization, right? I mean, we see it
Yes.
with our immigrant communities. We see it with how, I should say, our immigrant communities are being treated,
Yeah.
and as well as other communities here in our country. How can we resuscitate, if you will, folks' humanity? Like, what is that going to take, and what does that look like?
Yeah. I think storytelling is a big part of it. That's the big question that you asked. I don't think I'm like I can answer the whole thing, you know, but I think that storytelling is a big part of it. Um, and what I mean by that is like speaking about Palestine, for example, it's so rare that Palestinian people are interviewed on mainstream media, in the news, and television. You know, like Mo was like the first show centered on Palestinian American life in how many decades and years, you know, like
Right.
that humanizing of people I think is like really important. So you don't just know who these people are in their death. You
Mm,
don't so you know the complexity, the beautifulness, the joy, everything that makes these people, you know, amazing. Um I think it's important for everybody to know each other's humanity, to want to fight for it, you know? I felt the same way about black people forever, you know? And I still do. That you know, when it's police killing black folks and white people in the middle of the country just being okay with that. I had to think about that for a long time. Like, why how could anyone be okay with this? Like I do see the parallels there, you know?
mm,
And and I think part of it is for so long black humanity never really got to shine in its full complexity in mainstream media, you know?
mm.
It's like even though there's plenty more black folks in the media, more than Palestinian folks, it's still like a lot of times like a cartoonish
Yes.
caricature, you know, especially in mainstream rap, to be quite frank, you know? It's only until recent years that that a lot more complex hip hop artists started breaking through the mainstream, you know, but there was a dumbing down of our entire humanity in what a lot of like the middle of America was consuming, you know. And when you come and when you look at what how they've treated Palestinian people in the media, it's like, I mean, the president uses Palestinian as a slur, first of all, but
Right.
he's only able to do that because it's been decades and decades of a project where the only time a Palestinian is mentioned in the mainstream media is as a terrorist.
Right.
Their entire everything has just been reduced to this one thing that's like it's just dehumanizing, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our last conversation was with Palestinian American writer Karam Dana, who
Amazing.
was I think part of what he was saying is that the oppression of Palestinians is a template for the oppression of all other people, right? Whether it's the ways that police travel to Israel to learn how to oppress people, or the ways that, the same models of apartheid are used in so many different communities. And I think you're also telling us something, but also about the value of unique storytelling to undo some of those templates or to make it harder to put them in place.
I think that a lot of oppression is held up by stories too, and stories of omission, in which stories are not being told.
Yeah.
They work together. They work hand in hand. You can't bomb a people and have a population be okay with it if you didn't first tell a story about why it's okay to bomb those people.
Right. It's
It,
what's Plato, I believe, who said, right? It's storytellers who ultimately rule the world, right?
it
Yeah.
is. Yep.
Yeah. Well, Gabriel, I want to ask you, man, because you're a proud South Seattleite,
Yes,
as
yes.
much as I am.
Yes, yes.
And so it's for listeners who may not be familiar with that area of Seattle. I mean, it's undergone, I would say in the last 20 years, hell, in the last 2 years, it's undergone a
Mm-hmm.
lot of gentrification and displacement and so on and so forth. Obviously, both of us have been privy to that. And so I want to ask you, how has your own experience with displacement,
Mm-hmm.
from a diaspora, if you will, how has that sort of impacted, your own outlook, and how has that informed you on the way you show up for, Palestine and other communities that are resisting erasure right now?
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think because of that experience of my family first experiencing displacement when they left Ethiopia, and then secondly, experiencing displacement through gentrification, um, it makes all of it so personal. It doesn't feel like this is over there. It feels like this is this is history repeating. This is a part of the same monsters that had our people displaced. Um, it just makes it seem all connected. It makes me realize that it's all connected, I should say. And also, I think growing up in the South End specifically helps me see how we're all connected, because the South End that we grew up in was a place that was always Black, Native, Mexican, Chinese, Filipino, Vietnamese, Cambodian, Samoan.
Yeah,
I had Colombian neighbors, all next door to each other. Everybody's grandma spoke a different language, but we somehow found a language how we could communicate with each other as the kids of all these different
right,
communities on the basketball courts, through hip hop at school. And it's a really unique experience where I think building solidarity wasn't something that we learned as activists when we got older. I think building solidarity was something that we learned in the South End on the playground as children,
right.
you
Right.
know?
There's a story. I mean, we talk about stories. There's always a story I tell folks who aren't familiar with, I guess, what South Seattle, I don't want to say used to be, but I mean, the spirit of South Seattle. I remember being
Right.
10 years old, and um, I was looking out the window at this gas station that my parents were parked at, and there's this Jewish man. He had his yarmulke on,
Mm-hmm.
and he was trying to push his car up. It had stopped on him, stalled on him, and then you see, you know, this Muslim man come over to help him. You see this one
Yeah.
brother who, no neck, just with the tank top. I don't want to, I don't want to assume where he was from or what he was doing. But anyway, you see him, you see this Filipino man come over, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
see all these various people coming up, pushing this car, like struggling together, right, to get to
Yeah.
this destination. And that's what South Seattle was always to me, right? And so when
Mm-hmm.
I travel, when growing up traveling, other places in the United States, you're like, oh, this is this isn't quite what America really is, right?
I
And
know.
you realize how special of a place, you were privy to grow up in, and truly was a privilege. So
Yeah, I know. I know. I'm sitting here like two thoughts. Like one, man, there's so many people I didn't shout out, like Somali,
you're right.
Ethiopian, Eritrean, Jewish, like yeah, all of it. Like um the other thought is for me, like I experienced that it's not the way we grew up in the South End isn't the norm when I'm traveling with a bunch of people that I grew up with in a place like New York City, and everyone looks at us like, how do y'all even know each other? Why are y'all friends? Like this doesn't it's just so normal to us, you know? And then another experience is I have a good friend who's a hip hop artist from Pontiac, Michigan, who spent a lot of time in Seattle. And I remember one holiday we went over to my neighbor Daps's house. His family's Filipino, and we just we just had a family meal over there. And he was like, "This is the first time I've eaten in a Filipino person's house," you know. And
Wow.
I'm like, "What? How?" Like, And he's like, this type of like intercultural like just building just doesn't happen where he grew up. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a trip. It's a trip that it's not normal.
Right. Right.
For sure. I think you bring a lot of that spirit to the festival that you've been
Hmm.
organizing, the Palestine Will Live Forever Festival, which is now in its second year,
Yeah,
and coming back to Seattle on, I think, September 13th. Is that
that's
correct?
right.
Awesome.
Volunteer Park. Yep.
Yes. Um, you've said that this festival is not just a party, but
Mm-mm.
is part of the resistance. And so I guess
Mhm.
I'm wondering what you're trying to hold space for as you create this festival and what you're hoping it will bring, not just to our local communities, but also to a broader conversation among communities about Palestine.
Yeah. First, I want to say I'm just one person of many that's working on this festival. The theme this year is all of us or none of us, and what we mean by that is that we started this festival centered on Palestine, and we're still going to center on Palestine, but with all of the different communities being targeted, especially under this administration, it's more clear now than it's ever been that we don't get free unless we all get free.
Right.
Whether it's black people under attack, whether it's immigrants, whether it's trans communities. um, this year we're making even more of an intentional statement and representing all these different communities on stage, and we really want to model, I think, in all of my shows since even before the festival. Remember my friend Roberto Ascalon said this to me actually. He said it as a compliment, but I took it as an assignment. And I don't even know if he knows how much his words impacted me. But he said that what you do on stage is like you bring a little bit of the world that you want to see in the future to life on stage. He said that I was doing that, but I took it as an assignment of like, no, I really need to do that, you know? And with the festival, that's what we're trying to model is like what freedom looks like, what liberation looks like, what it sounds and feels like when we're all together telling our stories in our full truth and our full complexity and fighting for each other and doing our music with each other, on one stage, no division, you know? Um, I think that's the mission with the festival this year. If people leave from the festival seeing that they have new allies, new co-conspirators, new people to fight for, new people, new whole communities to ride for, that's the goal. I think that musicians, we have a really particularly powerful gift of bringing people together that might not see themselves in each other, and that's what we want to do with this festival is get people to see how much they really have in common, and how important it is for us to stand together in this time especially.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember writing about the festival for The Stranger last year,
Thank you for
and
that.
it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. But one of the things that came up even during that time was just the ability to, balance, grief with jubilee, right?
Mm.
In the essence that this is what sort of life is, right? Uh, it is a harmony of contradiction and complexity and so on and so forth. And so I want to ask you now, um, how do you personally balance, grief with creative action? And has art
Mm.
offered you a place of reckoning or refuge or
Mm.
something else entirely at this point?
I just gotta say, you guys ask really beautiful questions on this podcast. That is a beautiful question.
I'm just trying to live up to Nora, man. That's all, But anyway, no.
Feel the same, ditto.
both of y'all. These are both beautiful questions. Um, you know, yeah, I don't know how else to channel grief other than putting it into creative action, you know? Um, I think with grief, what little I know about it, is that it's something that lives in your body until you find a way to let it go, you know? And I think there's a lot of ways to let that go. I think that grief comes in waves, it hits unexpectedly. Um, but if you don't do something with it, it can feel like a rock in your chest, you know? So sometimes the best thing you can do is cry. Um, I think it's important when you're grieving to move your body to get that to move that energy out of your system. Um, but for me, I found that the best way for me to move through grief, to exhale, I guess, is to make art, is to write about it. Um, a lot of times it's like I feel trapped in a prison if I'm not able to describe the thing that I'm inside of. And the minute I can like describe really what I'm feeling and 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 what it is I'm inside of, I'm able to get outside of it.
Mm.
But I have to write about it first. I feel like I'm quoting James Baldwin verbatim, by the way. He said
Yes.
this in an interview.
Hey, yes. If you're gonna steal from the best, right?
It's James, I try to credit people when I can.
So I think one of the other purposes of the festival, as I've heard you and other organizers speak about it, is to move beyond just perceptions of Palestinian suffering.
Yeah.
Um, and so, particularly given that the focus of the festival this year is widening to include, God, all these other communities that we are in grief with
Yeah.
right now, what else do you want to be able to convey about the moment that we're in through the music and the art and the conversation that happens there?
I want to convey that we can and we will survive as communities, you know? It might not be every person, unfortunately, you know? But we can and we will survive, you know? And we can and we will survive because of each other. The more we hold on to each other, the more we support each other, the more we look out for our neighbors, and we can get through. Um, I want people to go home with that feeling. I want people to feel encouraged to speak up, to speak out. I want people to feel seen, to feel validated in their experiences. I want them to feel energy to fight, to keep it going. I think that's like one of the biggest reasons we're doing it, is to give people that energy to just keep pushing when things seem so dire and so insurmountable. Um, if it wasn't for music, I don't know. I don't know how I'd be able to push forward. So I want to share that with other people. And I think I guess sorry, one thing I didn't say is there's music festivals that happen all the time, every day. I think what
Mm.
makes this festival different is the actual artists that we're booking. Like we are focused on both Palestinian artists and artists who have been unafraid to use their platform to speak up against this genocide and against all the different genocides and and just shit that we're facing. Excuse my language.
That's okay.
Um, these are artists who a lot of times in this country get censored for what they're saying. Like we're centering them on purpose. And I
You
think
saying
that's
we
what
don't
makes us
believe in freedom
different.
of speech in this country, Gabriel?
Oh, do you think we do?
So, I mean, so I do want to ask you. I mean,
Hmm.
you you so eloquently put forward how music and creativity can be such an animating force in life, and
Hmm.
so the last month we had celebrations like whether it was Juneteenth, whether it was various Pride celebrations, even as right we had a political regime that
Hmm.
essentially y- they were straining to even mention that those things either existed or, or didn't
Yeah.
want to at all. And
Yeah.
yet you had so many people just coming out, just trying to in almost in defiance, right, of trying to showcase that no, we're going to celebrate anyway. And
That's
so
right.
I want to ask you, I mean, is there something in your mind, is there something uniquely powerful or even a threat to the status quo about people coming out to dance, sing, and love, and just refusing to be reduced to their pain?
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Um, I think it's so vital. I feel like the theme throughout this conversation has been hold on to your humanity, but it feels like that. It's another way of holding on to your humanity and refusing to obey in advance, right? Like that's something organizers have been saying across the country in this, current time period of rising fascism. Refuse to obey in advance. Don't let them silence you. Don't let them reduce you. Don't let them dehumanize you. And every way we can show up publicly proud in our full selves like is another act of defiance, and it's giving other people the strength and encouragement to do the same. So yeah.
I think one of the other things that I'm hearing you say in this conversation is that it's really important for us to be together in our grief, but also in our efforts to rebuild or create
Mhm.
new things. Which reminds me quite a bit of your last album, From the Ashes of Our Homes, which I understand you wrote after losing your own home in a house fire.
Mhm.
One of the kind of persistent themes of our conversations on this podcast is about what it means to rebuild and repair and constantly try to hack together fixes to things while so many things are breaking around us. And so, I guess, how does that theme enter into your work of your music, but also maybe the work that you're trying to do with this festival around memory and repair and reconstruction?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that album. From the Ashes of Our Homes is my favorite album that I've ever written, and and I really don't think enough people like clicked play on it, to be
Okay.
honest.
Well, we're telling all of our listeners to click play because it's
Yes,
fantastic.
go copy.
Appreciate that. I just want people to hear it. That album is really deep to me, From the Ashes of Our Homes. Not just because I wrote it after a house fire, but I wrote it it's channeling so much. Like I wrote it after a house fire, in the midst of the global pandemic, after, the George Floyd uprisings across the country, while a genocide was taking place in Tigray in Ethiopia, where my people are from. And that genocide right there is something that totally shook me to my core in such a deep way. Like it made me question even my idea of what it means to be an Ethiopian person. You know, everything, every concept of home that I had was rocked in 2020 and 2021. You know, um, the displacement that you mentioned, Marcus, like I wasn't living in the South End anymore for the first time. Um, Ethiopia, the pandemic, like actual literal house fire. And with the pandemic, losing people. Like I lost some of my best friends, in that year. And not just best friends, but like people in community. Like there's still we lost so many people in those years that it's like I'll think about somebody and then remember that they died and feel like I have to grieve all over again, you know? So all of that pain was like channeled into that album, From the Ashes of Our Homes. It took 3 years to make. Um, and it's personal, but it's not personal. That's why I said our, and that's why I pluralize homes, because everything that I went through just wasn't me, you know? In the time that we lost our home to a house fire, like it was just a freak accident while we lost our house. It was like a rechargeable battery that exploded in our laundry room, right? But while that was happening in our laundry room, um, the whole like a big part of Washington was also on fire. It was in August of 2020, and people were losing their houses like in a multiple like so many people were, you know, um, and they weren't able to rebuild and they weren't able to bounce back the same way that we were, you know. So I didn't want to just make it about my pain, it's about ours. And what do we do? How do we build from the ashes of all of these collective homes? I think that thought is something that it's just, oh God, it's in everything. It's like not just my music, it is in all of the work that I'm doing since, you know? And one thing that I've learned from losing a house is that your home isn't just in the building, it's actually not. Um, I think one of the most beautiful experiences that Ijoma and me had in this whole like journey of the last 4 or 5 years is the day after we lost our house, the love that we got from the community in Seattle. Like I don't know if I've ever felt more loved in my life is when people were like grieving our house fire as if it was their own house. You know, people were like sending us songs, and someone found the hotel we were staying in and showed up with tea for our lungs because they were worried about our lungs. Like the the care and the way that people showed up, it was like it was so overwhelming that it's something that I think Ijoma and me still hold on to today. Like, we might not have a house, but our home is with these people, you know? And that's been one of the most heartening things in all of it, you know, is that, yeah. Another thing that I surprisingly haven't said yet because I feel like I say it all the time is build community every single way that you can. Um, the years of just building community, folks really showed up for us in our time of need, you know? Um, and that's why I say we got to keep showing up for each other because there's so many of us in similar and much worse situations, you know? Another trippy thing about that album too. Sorry to this is so long. You might have to edit it later.
Nah, it's
Uh,
all good.
but I wrote about Palestine on that album, and that was released before October 7th.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I guess that's not a surprise because if you look through my work, like Palestine has and different artists and storytellers from Palestine have inspired me for so long. Like, it's in a lot of my music going all the way back to like 2007 and probably before then. But this song on the record was about it's called An Open Letter to My Cousins in Israel, and it's about the situation with Ethiopian IDF soldiers actually. And the line in the hook, or there's a chant at the end of the song rather, where I said, "If we want to get free, Palestine must be." Um,
Mm,
and I was speaking directly to what I found out later are literal cousins. I do have
right.
literal cousins in the IDF, but I was speaking at the time like kind of just to all Ethiopian and Eritrean people as like metaphorical cousins out there. Yeah, and it's just wild that I was like, no, this song needs to be on this album. And
Yeah.
then a month later, everything like kicked off, you know?
Man, that's the second prophecy you seemingly had that you alluded to today
I
in
don't
this
think it's a,
interview.
I don't think it's a prophecy. Like
Hmm.
that's 75 years. Like people have been people have been vocal about the need to end the apartheid state and to
Right.
free Palestine for longer than I've been alive for a reason.
Right.
People were trying to stop this from happening for decades. So I don't think it's a prophecy. It's me echoing things that I've heard. I think the one thing that was different was I had been longing to hear publicly a conversation about the need for Ethiopian, Eritrean,
Mhm.
African migrants in general who live in the state of Israel, who are horribly discriminated against in that state. I never hear conversations about the need for them to build solidarity with the Palestinian people, and it seems like such an obvious link. I never heard a
Mm,
song about it, so that's the song that I chose to write, you know?
yeah, yeah. Well, that's again. I mean, if you have not copped the album, I mean, I'm sorry to be sounding like DJ Khaled here or whatever, but go, go, go get it. Damn it. Um, that being said, Gabriel, seriously, this has just been an incredible time with you, and it's been a
Thank
privilege
you.
to be here with you. We typically finish every episode where Nora and I we share our 8 ounces of joy. You know, what is
Mm,
sort of getting us through the week. What is what are we sort of holding on to, and with all the chaos surrounding the world right now. And so I want to ask you that question, like as you're out here organizing, as you're making music, as you're just trying to be a good partner to
mm-hmm,
your
mm-hmm,
spouse.
mm-hmm.
What is it that you're holding on to now? What are your 8 ounces of joy that you're trying your best to squeeze out of the day?
Yeah. Um, well, the sun is shining in Seattle right now, so I have to mention that first because we work for these days, like 10 months of rain just to have some days like this,
That's real.
So
Yeah.
true.
so that's one. The family that you mentioned, my spouse, like that gives me joy every single day. Um, yeah, love. And actually the music itself has been giving me joy a lot. Um, I didn't mention it yet, but 2025 has been all about collaboration for me. I've decided that I'm not doing a solo record this year, but I've worked on 5 albums this whole year,
Wow.
and I'm only a primary vocalist on one of them. And it's the first time that I've been doing that work as a producer. And a couple of them are going to be released in the next few months. And that's giving me a lot of joy. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's dope. Gabriel Teodros, September 13th, Palestine Will Live Forever, second annual festival over at Volunteer Park in the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Seattle. No shade at Capitol Hill, although the first one was over in the South End, but
I
it's all
know.
good. Share it with the city. Share it with the city. I understand.
Bro, it was hard to book this year. It was hard. Just people snatched up them Saturdays early.
Yeah, that's real. That's
Yeah.
real.
If we really tried to keep it in the South End. Everything was booked on Saturdays, like through the summer.
Well, hey, well,
Yeah.
respect to you. I will definitely be your presence there,
Thank you,
and
brother.
we will make sure to also put a link for folks who do want to donate in support of the festival.
Dog. Thank you, family.
And just thank you for reminding us of the importance of creativity and communal joy in these times. It was a really life-giving conversation. Appreciate
Right
you.
on. Oh, thank you so much. It's good to meet you.
Yeah, you too. See you at the festival.
Yeah, see you there.
Nora, I got more insight from that one conversation than I did from 3 therapy sessions and that pain-killing elixir known as Bacardi rum, which, by the way, does not count as self-care no matter how many candles you light.
I think your therapist would want you to say that.
Right?
It's definitely cheaper and way better for your liver, and bonus, does not have any weird aftertaste of regret and emotional avoidance. But no, seriously, Gabriel is so incredible. It's a gift to have him with us today.
Yeah, no, it truly is.
I think one of the really important things that he pulls all of us into doing is making sure that we speak loudly and often on issues, even when they scare us. And I don't know about you, but I needed another reminder of that this week, and I'm really grateful for it.
I did too. And I would say, just the levels of grace that Gabriel approaches people in life with. I am a person who is very much at times quick to anger with certain people who, let's just say, traffic in ignorance. And, I will say, like, having Gabriel as an example, I've learned to have a lot more grace in life, and I'm very thankful to him for that.
Yeah, he exudes it constantly, which I don't know how a person can do, but props to him for being our role model.
Absolutely. I do want to be him when I do finally choose to grow up, but it's like a few years away. Anyhow, that being said, Nora, why don't we get into our 8 ounces of joy for today?
I would love that. I want to preface this by saying it's a really weird 8 ounces of joy. We lost this week the poet Andrea Gibson, who I think to so many people was just such an incredible voice of what it means to live in a time of sorrow and fear and just do it anyways with joy. And so I know a lot of folks are really grieving right now, and so it feels a little weird to say like this is also a source of joy, but I think Andrea themselves said that they wanted people to recognize that when they finally passed, they lived with cancer for a really long time, that they wanted people to see it as a victory rather than a defeat. And I think the victory is that all of us are sitting with their words and their memories this week. And in particular, I came across something they said this week. I think they said it in around 2020. But they said, in the end, I want my heart to be covered in stretch marks. And I love that reminder to all of us to expand our hearts, even when things are really scary.
Yeah. Wow. That is incredible. I have to say, I feel very much like mine is extremely trivial in the face of that. You go
I'm
with,
sorry.
you go, you go, you go with a generational poet, and I go with like some terrible IP from Warner Brothers. But anyhow,
it takes both. It takes both to have joy these days.
That is true. I'll keep this brief, but I recently saw the new Superman movie directed by James Gunn, and I actually did a review about it for the Stranger. And for those who don't know, it was getting attacked prior to its release from a lot of conservative groups, including Fox News, who were talking about it was too woke, it was this and that. And the main issue they took with it was the fact that the director, James Gunn, said that, Superman's best trait isn't the fact that he can, bench press skyscrapers or leap tall buildings or has heat vision or whatever. It's that he has, this thing called human kindness that is very much in short supply these days. And I would just say, Superman has been one of my favorite sort of mythical characters since I was a young boy. My dad, he would work 2 jobs to afford sending me to Catholic school when I was younger, and he would, his way of, besides working his ass off, of showing that he loved me was, to sit by the fireplace, and he would read, Superman comic books to me.
Aww.
And I think, what I said in my piece is true today as when I was, younger, is that, ultimately we're living now, right? Very much so. I think we're acutely aware of this sort of narrative battle that we have, of, how we should comport ourselves in society. When, we had our episode earlier about toxic empathy, supposedly, right? And how, that has become, more and more mainstream. And so to me, to have, even though it is a mythical story, right? But to have an example of somebody who uses their power for not themselves, not to fly above people, but to walk alongside them and to truly just help them to be not a savior, but a servant. As the, comic book nerds know, the very first page of the first Superman comic book says he fights for the oppressed, right? And to even have, as kind of, our conversation with Gabriel sort of elucidated, right? I mean, it's, if you can have more people, right, saying, speaking up and speaking for the right thing, that's important. But I also think the more stories we can have, regardless of whether they're true or not, but just, even just these motifs in life that we can have that speak to what is right and what is just and what is transformative. I think all the better. So I'm all in for Superman. I'm plugging Bacardi, Parrot Bay, and I guess Superman. I promise you, I'm a man of the left. I promise you, folks.
We're gonna work on the sponsorships though, so we get some credit for these shout outs. No, but I think it's true. We need as many myths and stories that will sustain us as possible. And apparently Republicans are scared of even the most white mainstream characters. So keep freaking them out. Keep telling stories that keep them up at night.
And a quick shout out though, because I put this in my piece. So Superman was actually created by two Jewish men who were children of immigrants, and he very much underscores, I guess in the Jewish faith, it's called Tikun Olam.
Mm-hmm.
And it's meaning to help repair the world, right? And so there's a very much an analog to Gaza in this movie, shall we say. And I was in the theater with one of my roommates in the theater. Was a Jewish woman who started to cry during the film, and then I asked her afterwards, sort of what was going on, and she said, she felt that her Jewish identity was actually portrayed truly right on screen, even though it was this big budget blockbuster, in the sense of you have this Jewish coded character who for the first time is played by a Jewish actor in his 87-year history, who is really living up to the ideals as she saw it of Judaism. And she was saying it just spoke to her that more, not just Jewish people, but all of us need to adopt that posture of speaking up, for the folks in Gaza, as this murderous genocide continues on. So, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that being said, so yes, we can all be superheroes just by raising our voice, to put a fine point on it. God, I'm sounding like one of those, the more you grow, the more you know. Anyway, before I get too corny here, let me go ahead and read us out for the day. Thank you, audience, again for joining us for another episode of In the Meanwhile. As always, a huge shout out to our brainiac producer, Jessica Partnow, and to the musical savant, Laham Aluo, for our show music. You can find and follow us on all of your favorite podcast platforms, or on YouTube, Instagram, or Blue Sky. New episodes drop every Friday. And until then, we'll catch you in the meanwhile.